This, for us, is how contact begins. But I'll say good day to you this day of your time. How are you all? All right, thank you. Once again, we will thank each and every one of you individually and all of you together collectively for the co-creation of this interaction and the allowance of this transmission. It is always an opportunity and a gift and a blessing for us to experience through each of you another facet of the multidimensional crystal of creation, so we thank you for this opportunity of sharing.
Is it possible that Earth is being contacted telepathically by extraterrestrial beings through channeling? Based on my experience, it's possible that I've been channeling such a being for the past 30 years. Of course, no one has to believe anything in this film. Sometimes I can hardly believe this happened to me. But whether anyone believes my story or not, it'll never change the fact that it's true.
First contact between Earth and extraterrestrials has been imagined in literature and cinema for generations, usually in scenarios that depict our fate with blood-curdling terror. In more recent times, with a few exceptions, our films about ET contact have evolved from fear-based stories to ones laced with cautious optimism and sometimes even hope. For the past several decades, organizations such as SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, have been scanning the skies with powerful radio telescopes, listening for transmissions from other civilizations. Aside from a few anomalous signals that remain unexplained, there is still no hard evidence of radio communication from an alien society. But what if ETs have evolved beyond such technology and no longer use radio to communicate? What if they never did? What if alien messages are being delivered in a truly alien way instead, such as telepathy? But why would an ET civilization choose telepathy to communicate? Wouldn't a radio transmission or some form of written language be simpler? It may seem easier to us, but without the proper emphasis or context, the message may have more than one meaning, as in this example. A woman without her man is nothing. A woman. Without her, man is nothing.
There's a little bit of a misunderstanding or a little bit of a contradiction in our society about the idea of alien contact. You always hear scientists say, well, look, aliens are going to be very alien and they're going to act in ways that are very different than the way we act. And yet when you propose the possibility that they might actually communicate with us through channeling, they'll go, no, they're going to do it by radio waves. Well, how mundane is that? I mean, that's very human. So I think the idea that from Bashar's point of view, if they have the ability to somehow work with someone that can be trained to act as a biological receiver, in a way it's much more efficient because not only are you getting the language translated, you're getting the idioms of the culture, you're getting the body language, there's a much more 3D holistic expression of the translation coming through a person than there is through a radio.
We are often asked throughout the course of these transmissions, from many of you, the question, what is my purpose in life? Passion is your purpose in life. Your purpose is passion.
If someone had told me I'd wind up being a channel for an extraterrestrial entity, I'd have thought they were crazy. But here I am. These kinds of things aren't supposed to happen in the real world. But it did happen, and from that moment on, I knew the world was bigger and far stranger than I was taught to believe. People say truth is stranger than fiction. Mark Twain said, why shouldn't truth be stranger? After all, fiction has to make sense. Was my UFO encounter a sign of things to come, not just for me, but for humanity as well? I don't have all the answers yet, but as I continue to explore my relationship with Bashar, my thoughts keep going back to the beginning, back to 1973, to the day that changed my life forever. I was driving home on the San Diego freeway from West Los Angeles into the San Fernando Valley. My brother James, my sister Jen, my friend Tracy, and her brother Corey were all with me in the car. As we were driving down the grade into the San Fernando Valley, I spotted two bright lights hovering over a hotel in the distance.
What is that? It's weird.
It's not a plane.
No.
You guys see this?
God.
Look, guys, look. Look, there it is.
Oh my God, yeah.
Look at it go, look at it go. Oh my God.
I remember looking out the window of the car, and I remember a large triangular shape. It was dark gray, and it just sort of sat there.
It was striking in how symmetrical and how exact the triangle it was.
I saw lights in the corner, some bluish white lights in each corner and some smaller lights on the edges, and those were helping us define it, in the sky. So, for me, I remember it looked just like a rack you use for racking pool balls on a pool table.
When we ever travel together, it's usually very jovial, very joking mood. And I remember it being very quiet and very contemplative and very serious after that because, like I say, everybody was just kind of struck by what they had seen.
It didn't feel dangerous. It just felt like it's the unknown,
It's very odd when you can't find an answer. You know that you've seen something. There is no answer, and you're kind of left with these dots that you can't connect. And it's your own experience and trying to share it with other people. You just can't do it. You have to be there to see it.
Hey, do you see?
My God.
Is that the one from last week?
It looks like
Here
it.
it goes.
Okay, right here, turn. There it is. I found it again. I'll get a picture for you.
We're gonna get it.
Stop.
Can I prove that the ship was Bashar's craft? No, of course not. I can't even prove that it came from another world. But if we have the ability to create that kind of technology, a ship that can hover silently and take off like a speeding bullet without any visible means of propulsion and without making a sound, then somebody has been able to keep that technology a complete secret from the public for the past 40 years since the sighting.
Let's assume for the moment that the unidentified flying object they witnessed was, in fact, an extraterrestrial spacecraft. If so, it raises several questions. How is it possible for ETs to travel hundreds of light years to Earth? why do so many reports of ET beings say they look similar to us? If they are here, why don't they land openly and make contact? This documentary will address these questions and many others, but the answers may be far more unexpected than we imagine. Channeling, UFOs, and ETs have been controversial subjects for decades, sparking heated debates between believers and debunkers. Of course, no photo or film can offer absolute proof that such things are real. However, some of the information introduced by Bashar, the ET being reportedly channeled by Ankka, has already impacted the lives of thousands of people around the globe since 1984. These messages contain new insights and perspectives regarding the nature of consciousness, theories of physics, and possibly a glimpse into a larger reality. The only thing required for this journey is an open mind. The first question: what exactly is channeling?
Channeling is a natural altered state. I think we all have the ability to do it. I think we all do it from time to time. If somebody is doing what they love to do, following their passion, in the zone, that's a channeling state. When you're doing something and you're totally caught up in it and you're not paying attention to the passage of time, it seems like 5 minutes has gone by, you look up, it's been 3 hours. That's a channeling state. A painter who paints a painting, who's focused on that and nothing else, a singer that's lost in the song, an actor who becomes the character, an athlete at the peak of their performance, a teacher passionate about educating students. That's one of the things that's most important to me, is to demystify this whole concept of what channeling is, because it is not outside the realm of normal human experience. We do it all the time.
Channels and mediums have existed in many cultures for thousands of years. The oracle at Delphi is one famous example in ancient Greece. The people of that time would rely on such seers and mystics for guidance in both personal and worldly matters. The Bible tells the story of King Saul, who asked a medium in the city of Endor to call upon the spirit of the prophet Samuel for advice. In more modern times, a psychic called Edgar Cayce, known to many as the Sleeping Prophet, delivered thousands of messages and information while in trance. Today, that information is archived at the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach. Many point to a woman named Jane Roberts as the first modern channel who, in the 1960s, is said to have brought through a spirit entity known as Seth.
It is only when you do not know yourself that you fear you are evil and afraid to look within yourself. But when you open up those doors, you are amazed by the immensity and the grace of your own being.
One day, I was introduced to a channel named Tom Massari at a public channeling event.
I went to listen for a while, and I thought the information was very interesting, and I thought it was very helpful information that seemed to have the ability to help people make positive changes in their lives. And eventually, the entity actually offered to teach a channeling class, and I thought, well, how is that possible? I thought channeling was something that just happened to someone. I didn't think it was something you could teach or learn.
I went into the class not because I thought I was going to become a channel, but just because I wanted to further my research. However, during one of the guided meditations in the class, I experienced what I can only call a telepathic contact from Bashar and his people, and in that one instant, a memory actually came back of having made an agreement before this life with Bashar to do this channeling with him.
I understood in that instant that the UFO had been shown to me by him on purpose to get me to start learning, start questioning, start finding out what was going on, and it led me to learn about channeling, so that when the time came to fulfill the agreement I had made to channel Bashar, I would be ready. I'd have enough information so that I wouldn't be scared. I would know how to move forward. I would understand that channeling was beneficial to people. So I, thought, well, first, I don't know, am I hallucinating? I mean, is this a side effect of the meditation? Is this real? Is it my imagination? But in that one instant, this was going on in my head. I wasn't telling anyone. The entity coming through the teacher stopped talking to the class and turned right to me and said, there is an entity here for you right now if you're ready to begin. That was startling. And even more startling, I glanced over and I saw that one of the other classmates somehow had picked up on the image of Bashar I saw in my head, and she was actually sketching it on a piece of paper. And I realized, okay, you know, this is not just my imagination. There's two outside validations here that something real is happening.
The question that remained, though, was Bashar really a separate entity? Or was I just tapping into another aspect of my own consciousness? Either way, I realized that if I pursued the channeling, I would be exploring uncharted waters. Along with the events in the class, the UFO sighting suggested that Bashar might truly be an independent entity. But mainstream society and the media usually ridicule people who report UFOs. What would they say if I said that an alien was speaking through me? At the end of the class, I was approached by a woman named Margot Chandley, and she was writing a doctoral thesis on the connection between channeling and psychology. And I became one of the subjects that she studied for her paper. So she would invite me to her house, and she would invite friends over, and I would channel for them while she took notes in order to write her thesis. Well, the first week there were 5 friends, and then the next week there were 10 friends, and word of mouth started to spread that this was going on. And then there were 20 friends and 30 friends. And before we knew it, I had to start channeling twice a week to accommodate everyone. And eventually we had to start holding public events in order to handle the crowds. And word of mouth kept spreading. So eventually I found myself channeling in cities all over the world. And so really my public channeling career started in 1984 with Margot. Did I choose this path from a higher level of existence before I entered this life, as Bashar has proposed? When I think about it, there were hints and signs. Most were subtle, but one in particular stands out. When I was little, we lived in this old West Hollywood apartment building. One day, Dad was at work, Mom was in the kitchen, and I was playing by myself in the living room. Suddenly, this small, swirling whirlpool of light appeared and floated in front of me in midair. It just hung there. I remember being transfixed and feeling like it was some kind of window to somewhere else. I didn't actually hear a voice, but it felt like someone was sending me a message from the other side of the light. Looking back now, I wonder if that moment is where my journey really began.
When Daryl first made his connection to Bashar and started to channel, it was a little challenging for him because of Bashar's intense energy. And as I watched Daryl work to get out of the way, to let Bashar's energy come through, I realized that it was just Bashar's passion and excitement and bringing through the ideas that he wanted to share. But most of all, I loved his humor.
I'm a member of SETI. Do you know SETI?
Yes, we understand.
Search for extraterrestrial.
Here I am. Search over.
What do you think is funny about us?
What isn't?
I'm such a dreamer.
What does that mean?
I dream of meeting my true love.
You dream of meeting your true love. Look in a mirror.
This question's a bit eccentric, but
A bit
I was
what?
wondering,
Bit eccentric?
A bit, yes.
Because talking to an alien through a human is not eccentric enough.
Do you have films in your reality?
No, we just come watch you.
Okay. Perfect.
Before I started working with Bashar, I had a very traditional work life. I had careers in banking and finance, as a university professor, and also as a psychological counselor. In 1985, as part of my exploration of psychology, I happened upon a lecture being given by Bashar at an expo. Upon hearing him speak, I was so amazed at the clarity and the cutting-edge nature of the psychological information he was providing. From that point forward, my life moved in the direction of bringing together all of my business experience, all of my teaching experience, and all of my counseling experience into one form of work that incorporated everything that I had learned. I became so passionate about sharing Bashar's information as a way of helping to improve the lives of both the people and the animals on our planet.
While it's possible for a channel to filter or color a telepathic message, I think the most important thing is to focus on the message rather than the messenger. Is the information empowering or is it controlling? Is it love-based or fear-based? Is it integrative or disconnecting? Is it positive or negative? I feel that the bottom line is use the information that works for you, that speaks to your heart, and just leave the rest behind. The channeling class taught me to alter my brain waves to match Bashar's frequency. He does the same thing on his ship, and somewhere in the middle, our vibrations meet and harmonize. When they do, my body becomes like a biological resonator, and my personality starts to mirror his.
That's an EEG cap, and it's going to be recording your brain waves as we measure various states that we'll be exploring today. And looking up here, we can see that each of the electrodes that we have hooked up on that cap have achieved a level of impedance that is accurate and that will properly record the brainwaves without interference.
In the beginning of the channeling, the channel was capable of holding on to, shall we say, or bringing through the idea of about 1.5 to 2% of our energy. In the ensuing years following the initiation of contact with the channel, it was thus then capable in the channel's body of expressing our energy up to about 3%. On average now, we are expressing about 5% of our total energy.
So we're looking at a picture of Daryl's baseline EEG. And what I've done is to record Daryl's baseline when he is not channeling and compare that to his EEG when he is channeling. Now here is a picture of Daryl's raw EEG, baseline again, in which we see a very rounded and rhythmic dominant frequency, we call it, in the posterior cortex, or the back of the head. And this is a good finding, it's a positive finding, because it tells us that Daryl's nervous system is stable, and also that he has what we call good thalamocortical functioning. And this is a common feature, a characteristic that is found in individuals who are peak performers. So here we have a picture of what disconnects when Daryl begins to channel. And you can see the areas in blue, the functional Brodmann areas we call them, that are not used when he is channeling. And it appears that he disconnects from his personal sense of self. He disconnects from the experience of pain. Now, what increases when he begins to channel is, first of all, his processing speed. And processing speed is a very interesting phenomenon, because what happens is it develops early in childhood. And by about the age of 5 or 6, and certainly 9 or 10 maximum, we reach a set point. And this set point doesn't usually change during the lifetime. And in Daryl's case, it actually went up when he began to channel. And it increased when he listened. The actual frequency of the processing speed was tuned to an exact frequency all over the brain. Now we're looking at Daryl's anterior cingulate while he's channeling. And you can see the red areas there. There is actually gamma frequencies that I found in his anterior cingulate. And gamma frequencies relate to the higher mind. And gamma frequencies are often found in Tibetan monks and people who meditate a lot. To summarize sort of what I found here in Daryl's brain in comparison with the channeling state, he starts from a very stable resting state. And then he experiences changes that statistically less than 1% of the population would experience in the same way. He increases his processing speed. He tunes it exquisitely to one frequency all over the brain. And then he's able to create a resonant holding environment for the peak performance or the channeling to happen. He pumps energy into the right frontal cortex and the right auditory cortex so that he can empathize and hear very, very clearly. And because of the gamma frequencies in the anterior cingulate, he can shift gears. He'll be able to shift gears and navigate cognition, thoughts, and emotions very, very flexibly. And he'll be able to interpret from a higher perspective, from a more evolved place in his mind, much like from the highest mountaintop.
When I first started channeling, the process of shifting into the altered state took a little longer than it does now. My breathing changed, taking in more oxygen to support Bashar's higher energy. I would also experience a spectrum of emotions as I slipped into the channeling state, as my energy rose in frequency on its way to synchronizing with Bashar's vibration. Flashes of anger, fear, and sadness gave way to hope, happiness, and love, at which point our individual vibrations would harmonize. There was a period of a few years where I stopped channeling to pursue my film career. But when I resumed doing sessions, I was nearly overwhelmed by the emotional reconnection to Bashar's energy, and a wave of compassion washed over me. I felt like I was coming home.
Most of the experience is like being in a very dynamic, very energetic daydream. And it's like, I don't really hear the words in the same way that if someone is really deeply in a daydream and somebody calls their name and it takes them 5 times to hear, it's kind of like that. I know there's an interaction going on, but it might as well be taking place in another room, in another house, somewhere else. And I know this is getting translated for someone through language. I'm acting kind of as a biological translator. My energy is sort of taking on the personality of Bashar. It's not like he's in me, there's no possession in that sense. But I'm locking with his frequency like a tuning fork. And by matching his frequency, you get a model, a representation, a symbol of his personality. Because he's not speaking English, he's not speaking any language at all, he's just sending thoughts. But because I'm operating on the same wavelength as I've been trained to do, I'm having the same thoughts at the same time. So I'm able in our culture to translate his ideas into our language. I'm focused on these pictures, these energy patterns. When he's talking to someone, I see all the different patterns that represent who they are, what their beliefs are, what their hopes are, their dreams are. And he's tapping into all sorts of different sources of information. He's tapping into their higher mind, into their memories. He's tapping into higher source, other beings from his world, other worlds. He's tapping into whatever he needs to, like a switchboard, to bring the information through that answers the questions that they're asking. So I'm constantly feeling all these different energy webs and lines of information coming and going, like some sort of a galactic train station almost. And it just all coalesces in this telepathic hit that is sometimes represented by symbols, by abstract shapes, sometimes by literal images. But it's just coming so fast and furious, and time is so collapsed for me that I can do nothing but just let it through and just sort of watch the show. And these things just kind of flow dynamically through me in such a way that I can't pay attention to anything else. I'm left a little disoriented at the moment because I have to sort of wake up from the dream and remember who I am and where I am. But once I'm back, I'm very energized. It's very supportive energy. You know, in the beginning, it tired me out a little bit because there was unfamiliarity. There was resistance to the energy. I just didn't know how to handle it. I often say it's kind of like trying to shove Hoover Dam through a garden hose. But, you know, once I let go, I relaxed, I trusted him, I sort of stretched that way, those energy paths out, then it became very uplifting. It became very supportive. And now, when I come out of it, I may not remember it. It may fade like a dream. But I retain the concepts I need to retain for me. It works for me as well. I can apply them in my life. But I don't really remember the conversation. I didn't hear it. I don't remember some of the images that I had. But I'm left with this feeling of balance, this feeling that everything's okay, this feeling of possibility infinite probability, and I just feel good. A lot of times people will be coming to these sessions for years and years, and they'll develop a dialogue and a relationship with Bashar, but they've never actually introduced themselves to me until one day they'll come up and they'll start talking to me like I'm supposed to know who they are. It's like, I'm sorry, I have no clue who you are. So it's kind of that sort of thing.
Bashar. By the way, who gave you that name?
I took a channeling class, not because I thought it was going to be a channel. I was just doing research into channeling. But it was a series of guided meditations. And in one of the meditations, the word Bashar was there. Now, I thought it was his name. He explained later that in their society, they're telepathic, they don't need names. He knew we needed to call him something, and so that word was there. I have since understood that part of the reason that word was chosen is because it's an Arabic word. I don't speak Arabic, but part of my background is Arabic. And the word, even though it's not his name, is representative of what he does. I was actually told a couple of years after I started channeling that the word Bashar means messenger or bringer of good news.
Many of you recognize that there may seem to be, from one perspective, an acceleration of negativity, an acceleration of violence. But really, this is because you're at the end of the cycle of limitation and you have to get it all out on the table and deal with it now because there isn't that much time left to deal with these things. You have to get all of the negativity out on the table in front of your face so that you can consciously decide what kind of a world you really prefer to have. So now that you know you're strong enough to deal with it, you're getting it all out of your system as fast as you can, having the most extreme examples come up because you are strong enough to deal with it. So we call this the rubber band analogy. Fret not, despair not that you have experienced that degree of darkness, that degree of limitation, that degree of negativity. Because the farther back into darkness you pull the rubber band, when you finally let go, it's going to fly that much faster and that much farther into the light.
The reason that many scientists are skeptical of reports of encounters with extraterrestrials is that many of the witnesses describe them as being humanoid. The skeptics explain that in a universe as vast as our own, with so many planets unlike the Earth, the odds of alien life resembling us are incredibly small. And in general, they're probably right. Bashar himself has said that most of the life that he's encountered throughout the galaxy, they look nothing like us. I think the irony is that the skeptics have had the answer all along, but they've missed a vital clue. It's probably true that most alien life doesn't look like us. And therefore, if the reports of extraterrestrial humanoids are factual, it may be that these beings are not really alien.
Assuming for the moment that Bashar is real, who is he? Where does he come from? Why is he making contact with Earth?
The story of my people began in a parallel reality on an alternate version of Earth. The humans on that Earth were technologically far in advance of the humans in your civilization. However, they became focused on technology and intellect. Over generations, they lost connection to their humanity. They lost the ability to feel. They even lost the ability to reproduce. They engineered love out of their lives. They accomplished great technological and intellectual feats at the expense of their emotions, their physical bodies, and their spiritual qualities, which they considered to be inferior. But in doing so, they slowly destroyed their environment. In a last desperate attempt to perpetuate their species, they moved underground and began to clone themselves, but discovered that their DNA was no longer viable. When the attempt to clone themselves failed, they genetically mutated themselves into the beings you know as the Greys, in an attempt to adapt to their dying planet. However, they realized that the only solution would be to find a viable source of human DNA and introduce it back into their genetic makeup. They used their advanced technology to shift into parallel realities, such as your own, where they knew that humans must still exist. But without emotions, they had no understanding. of the fearful impact they would have as they abducted your people and extracted DNA in order to create our hybrid civilizations, which took centuries to complete. We were designed to bring emotionality and spirituality, vitality and balance back into the gray civilization, to reconnect more fully with creation so their culture would never die out. Although many of your people experienced these encounters with the Greys traumatically at first, we are grateful that you chose to help bring our civilization into being. In our appreciation, we share our knowledge and experience with you, with the vision that your world will choose a more positive outcome than the Greys, for we perceive that you have been traveling down a similar path.
If it's true that the destruction of their parallel Earth gave rise to the beings we call the Greys, can we use that knowledge to change our path? Or will we ultimately choose to suffer the same fate? We must all answer this question for ourselves.
While our civilization was being created, the Greys found a suitable planet in their parallel reality, and with the help of their advanced technology, they transformed it into our homeworld that became Ethasani. We have many forms of animal life. Along with us, plants and animals were brought to our world from many different worlds throughout the galaxy in order to create a balanced system in which we could reside. Some of these forms of life even came from your own world. Our world remains in a natural state. We do not build permanent structures on the surface. Our spaceships are our cities, and from within those ships, we can explore the vast unknown. We invite you to join us on this journey of discovery.
Considering the vast distances between the stars, how would ETs travel from one system to another so quickly? Many scientists still believe there's no way an ET could get to Earth in a short amount of time. Perhaps it's time to bury that outdated concept, just as the following ideas, once considered facts, were ultimately proven to be false. The concept of faster-than-light travel is no longer as far-fetched as it used to be. Scientists like physicist Miguel Alcubierre and NASA engineer Harold Sonny White have developed a model for a Star Trek-like warp drive that would warp the fabric of space and propel a ship to the nearest star in under 2 weeks, rather than the thousands of years it would take with our present rocket technology. A civilization 1,000 or even a few hundred years ahead of ours could already possess such technology.
In one dream, I experienced myself being on the ship that I saw, with Bashar standing there looking at me, and I was able to sort of look around the ship, and it was all kind of this I don't know, frosted crystalline type material. I saw another member of his species sitting at a control console, but I didn't see any controls. And he telepathically explained to me in the dream that their ships are actually artificially intelligent, and in fact, they're actually a representation of their own higher minds. And that the pilot is actually telepathically linked with the ship. They communicate. And so only the pilot can see the controls, which struck me as kind of like really cool and really efficient, because no one else can fly that ship but the pilot that's connected to the ship.
Even though you are unto yourself a beautiful oasis in the sea of stars that is your galaxy, you are not as isolated as you may think. Traveling to your world is not so difficult. We can travel more slowly if we wish through the manipulation of electromagnetic and gravitic fields. The idea, however, of going from star system to star system happens in a very different way. While you think of an object as existing in a location, to us, location is one of the properties of the object. If you thus then have an object at point A, and you are able to isolate it with an energy bubble, in a sense, unlock it from any particular reality, and thus then impose upon it the vibrational signature frequency of location B, it must stop existing at location A and instantaneously start taking up residence at location B without actually having traveled the intervening distance. You have actually changed its locational variable in its energy signature.
If this is an accurate description, then an extraterrestrial civilization with this technology would be capable of traveling light years in the blink of an eye. Thus, the distances between the stars would no longer be a barrier to interaction with other worlds such as Earth. To some degree, we've addressed the first two questions about Bashar, who he is and where he comes from. But the answer to the third question, why is he here, could herald one of the greatest events in human history: open contact with a civilization from another world.
I just hope to God they're friendly, and I hope we could communicate and become friends.
I'd say, hey, welcome. I figure that if they have the wherewithal to get here, they probably drop their craziness behind. Hopefully that's a natural law. If you can escape the planets or go to other planets, you got to be kind and loving and have something to offer.
The opportunity to hear the perspective and to witness the being of somebody who had been anywhere other than here would be fascinating.
It would just keep me interested in what humans are. You know, because the more we can look at how we are in the context of the life around us, the more we understand ourselves. So by looking at life on another planet, I think we could just learn a lot about what life is.
We do not mean this in a judgmental or negative way. We are to some degree joking a little bit. But why would we want to land in an insane asylum where all the inmates have guns? There have been occasions when people in your society in these interactions have said, Bashar, I know I'm ready. I'm ready to meet you today, right now. Well, all right, there have been a few occasions where we have agreed to see if that's so. And we have named the place and we have named the time that our ship will land. And those people have been there. And as soon, in all occasions, they see or sense that our ship is approaching, that our energy is growing, they run in great fear.
A lot of people wonder, why don't they land? Why don't they just reveal themselves? Now, Bashar's explained that A lot of civilizations that are more advanced, more integrated than ours, operate on a very high frequency level of energy. And because we tend to compartmentalize things in our consciousness, because we give into negative definitions, fear-based definitions, our energy is kind of erratic, random, and sort of a lower frequency more often than not. And he's likened the idea to gears. So a higher frequency race will operate like a fast spinning gear, and a lower frequency civilization will be like a very slowly turning gear. And if you jam those two gears together too quickly, you'll strip the gears. They have to be more synchronized before you can put them together. So basically the way Bashar showed me this is, in a dream I saw his ship land, and I saw him get out, and I saw him walk toward me. And as soon as he got, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 feet away, I actually suddenly lost my identity, and I saw my body through his eyes as if I became him, as if I was absorbed by him. And he said, see, that's why. It's like our energy is so much more overwhelming at this high frequency than yours is, that it can actually overpower your sense of identity. You're not fully integrated enough to sort of hold your own. So we are delivering information to you in the way that we are so that you absorb it at your own rate. You change at your own rate when you're ready to integrate. You upgrade your frequency when you're ready. And when you upgrade your frequency enough, when you kind of meet us halfway, then our energies will be harmonized and synchronized, and you won't experience this sort of loss of identity or give your power over to us. If we do it too soon, too prematurely, we're not really doing you any favors. We'll actually be very disruptive to not only your society, but to you as an individual. So the more you change, the more you grow, the more you become more of yourself, the more you'll be like us, the more compatible we'll be vibrationally, and the more we can interact physically, and that's when contact will occur.